Good morning. Welcome to Let's Get Growing. Beautiful morning in the garden today. We're at the end of September. We haven't even had a hint of frost yet. The weather's been quite beautiful. We finally got a bit of rain, which is a plus for us. We had quite a dry September, so things are looking pretty good. We're in the potscape today. We've been talking about last couple of shows. We've talked about keeping over alocasias, colocasias, things like that. Now we're getting into the hardier tuberous summer bloomers. So we're going to look at canna lilies today. Now, we are a little early, according to the weather, to dig our cannas, but, when the calendar starts getting close to October, we need to be ready. Now, the beauty of the canna lily is they're about zone 7 hardy, so they'll certainly take some frost. If you're sort of, figuring out which jobs and which plants need to come in and what jobs need to be done right away. Cannas can still wait. Our forecast for the next few weeks looks pretty good. Probably not much in the way of frost happening, so you can certainly leave your cannas to go a little bit longer. And this one in particular, this is called Bird of Paradise, and you can see it's actually pushing up a bloom spike. But because we have so much to move in, and we're going to be propagating these cannas, I'm going to dig them now. It's not going to affect the plants much. They're starting to slow down in growth anyway. So we're going to look at what to do with the canna lilies. So when the colder weather hits, you're ready. Now, really, you can wait for your cannas to get some frost. And it's not a bad thing. If you get your top foliage killed back by frost, that's okay. Certainly is not going to hurt the roots. You don't want the ground to freeze, but you don't have to worry if your foliage gets frost nipped before you dig your cannas. Actually, not a bad thing. What's happening right now is everything that the plant is making in food is going into the storage tubers. So we're going to go down and look at the storage tubers. Laura, can you see the bottom of the pot here? Yeah. Okay. So we've had these in a container. We tend to grow most of our cannas and stuff in containers because our dry, sandy soil is not always great for them. So we're in a container here. I'm just going to start digging around because I don't know how far the tubers are going to come out. So we'll sort of loosen around, see what we've got. I put 2 in here in the spring because I just had 2 small roots of this plant. So I just wanted to bulk it up so we can get some plants ready for next spring. So we'll see what we've got in here division-wise, plant-wise. Thing about cannas is they make a pretty stout rootstock. If you've grown them before, you can really have quite an amazing amount of roots when you dig a canna in the fall. Here we go. So we're going to lift this one out, shake off the soil so we can see what we're doing. We'll get rid of that fun little guy. Get rid of all this loose soil here and see what we've got in the way of tubers. So we got quite a few. You can see that some of them were really starting to stretch out from the plant. We got a beautiful one here, and we've broken it, but that's okay. We get a long, good piece of root there. Get a beautiful one here. If we go into the center of the plant, we're going to see that we have several other tubers in there. So depending on how you want to store it, you can just take this now, put this in the garage, put it somewhere dry, and let these tubers sort of harden off. Leave all the foliage on at the moment until it sort of starts to wither and dry up, because everything that's got goodness in here It's going to work its way down to the roots now. Now, what I'm doing with the tubers is I'm treating them a little differently because I'm going to pot these up right away and keep them sort of growing through the winter. So I could do that. Now, cannas, because they put a lot of roots out, you're going to get a clump, and you can sometimes divide them fairly easily. You might have to split the clump first, and then they start to come apart in pieces. So this one was fortunate enough that we can take it apart. Each stalk that you have should have a growth on it. So here we go. So this is what we're going to work with. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that and I'm going to pot that up right away, cut this back. Don't have a knife in with my hand here at the moment, but we get rid of some of that old growth there. And you can see we actually have a new shoot right here. New shoot right here. Bud over here. Bud here. That's going to make a sizable plant very, very quickly. So that's what we're looking for. Once you've let yours, if you're going to store them as just tubers, once you've let them die down, you can either store them as a clump and just leave them all together, or you could take them apart and store them this way. Depends what you have room for. If you need to pack them in a box or a crate or something, taking them apart like this is going to give you a lot more space to store your tubers. What do you store them in? Choice is kind of yours. You want to have them something that's going to keep them on the dry side and not get rotty and moldy itself. Shredded newspaper is good. Sawdust is good. Dry peat, it can be used as well. So whatever works for you. Have them in something where you can keep them actually quite dry and quite cool in the winter, and that's ideal. Like I said, cannas are almost winter hardy, so you want to keep them fairly cool so they don't sprout. Check them every few weeks just to make sure they're not getting too wrinkly. If you find they're getting too wrinkly, take a water mister and just mist the roots a little bit. That'll help sort of plump them up without sort of forcing them into growth. If you give them a real soaking, the plant's going to think it's spring rains and time to start growing. So, like I said, we're going to just take these apart. So with this one, these weren't big plants. Like I say, these are very small this year. So this one's going to give me 1, 2, 3 at least, 4 at least, maybe 5 divisions from that one plant. This one beside it should give me 5 divisions as well, maybe even more. So that's going to give us a nice start for our bird of paradise cannas for next year. Might as well just keep going here, see how we do. You get out of there. Don't steal those cannas. Okay. I know, I'm digging, right? See? Just get a little bit more here around this side. If I was doing this in the ground, I'd be using a digging fork rather than a spade. Digging fork allows you to get into the roots, lift the clumps of roots without doing much damage to the tubers. You see, because, if I had just started to dig that, I could have cut it up like crazy with a spade. So I always use a digging fork when I'm digging my cannas and dahlias and stuff out of the ground. It's just a much better tool for the job. Plus, you get all these fibrous roots. If you go in with a spade, you lose all those roots. Then we don't want to do that. So look, there's a beautiful shoot there. That one got broken, but that's okay. Still a good shoot there. And then this one I think is probably going to come apart fairly easily, just like the last one. Yeah, exactly. Look at that. Perfectly beautiful canna shoots to make great plants for next year. And again, if you're going to store them, leave them out to dry for a few days, maybe a week before you store them away. You want all this moisture to be gone. Now, generally, we don't rinse and wash these off. We just make sure that all the soil and everything is dry around them. There we go. Another nice little clump there with 2 divisions. And you know what? I bet if I just tease those, I'm going to get 2 good-sized divisions as well, even from that. That's a perfect one there. That hasn't bloomed yet. It's got good new growth on it. That's going to grow along very, very well. This one here, these are probably a bit small. Let's see this tuber here, this one here. Probably the growth is good, but the tuber is probably a little small. So I'd be inclined to leave that attached to the clump because it hasn't given us a whole lot of rhizome yet. There's a little bit starting down here. There's another one here, but I think I'll probably leave that together as one clump. Another thing to keep in mind when you're doing the cannas like this, if you've got one that's got that stalk formed, like this is a really strong stalk, that would have been a flowering shoot. That's not going to do anything for you next year. So you can cut those right down. It's these little ones here that you want to encourage because these little young ones are still young and fresh enough that you don't need to worry about it. So look for those there and you're good to go. So just to reiterate, you can wait till the frost has nipped them a bit. If you've got lots, go ahead and start doing them now. Allow them to dry before you start thinking about putting them away. And if you want to pot them up right away and get them growing, you can do that if you have the space. Just keep in mind, they're going to get tall and lanky indoors, so you want to sort of avoid doing that unless you have a real valid reason to be potting them up now. We can probably get them growing. If they grow well for us now through the winter, we might be able to split them again before spring and double up our numbers for next spring. So that's the way to do the cannas. Doing dahlias, pretty much the similar idea. Our dahlias, we tend to leave them in clumps and then split them in the spring. But again, every dahlia grower does it a little differently. But there's our cannas for today. Do we have any questions today, Laura?
Yeah, we have a few.
Okay.
So Cheryl bought a cone flower from a reputable garden center. It was 8 inches high. It is so healthy looking, but no further height. Will it grow taller next year, or was it a runt of the litter?
Well, with cone flowers and lots of other new perennials, you need to really watch the ultimate height. New varieties, breeders are creating new varieties that are shorter and shorter and shorter all the time. Why are they doing that? A, they look really good in a pot. They're really easy to manage for the growers. You know, if you think about Echinacea Magnus, for example, just an old-fashioned good selection of the purple coneflower, they can be 30 to 40 inches tall when they're in bloom. Things that tall are very difficult for the growers and the garden centers to manage. So breeders are always working on more and more compact varieties. They ship to stores well. They're easy to manage. They look good on benches. Unfortunately, some of them can always stay just that small. So it's something you need to be aware of. Check the heights on the labels very carefully when you're buying new echinaceas, because you can still get varieties anywhere from a foot tall to 3 feet tall. So your variety may only get a few inches taller next year than it is this year. If it stayed really, really compact, I suspect it's going to be a shorter one. So be aware of that for the positioning in the garden. Also make sure if it's got flowers on it now, cut those flower stalks off. Let the plant work at building a crown this fall so you have a much better plant next spring.
Paula would also like to know, are there tubers with castor beans?
Are there tubers with castor beans? No. Castor beans generally do not grow tuberous roots. They'll be a big fibrous root. So really what you need to do if you want castor beans again next year, look for the prickly seed pods, let them dry, collect the seed from them, and you grow them that way. You can't really keep them over. They're really too big to keep over. Even if you cut them back, they probably wouldn't be an easy plant to keep over. So you just grow them from seed fresh every year.
And how do you store the seeds for the winter?
Storing seeds for the winter? Right now, what we do with our seeds is we're collecting seeds from things all around the garden. They go right into paper grocery bags.